tools for naming variables. And another thing to consider also is data types. So variables can have different names, but they can also contain different kinds of data. And those are called data types. Now, when we did Hello World, I told you about the string data type, which is enclosed in quotes. This is called a string or a string literal. Now remember, these are not words. They look like words, but Python doesn't see them as words. What Python sees is a sequence of characters. That doesn't mean anything to Python other than what it is. An integer is what we call a data type that is a number with no decimal point. So an integer is any whole number, positive or negative. A floating point number or a float is a number with a decimal, negative or positive. Boolean can only have two values. It's either true or false. Notice that T and F on true and false are uppercase. If you write something equals true and it's lowercase, I want you to see this. Married equals true. It doesn't like it. When you see a red underline under your code, that means if you run this, it's going to give you an error. It doesn't understand this because it's not uppercase. So when it's uppercase, you can see that the word itself turns orange and the underline goes away. That means it understands what I'm doing. Also notice in PyCharm, at least in the color scheme I'm using, your color scheme may vary a little bit depending on how your computer's set up, but a string on my computer is green, an integer is blue, as is a float. So numeric types, integer and float are blue, strings are green, and booleans are orange on mine. So those are the four major types that we're going to start with today. String, integer, floating point, boolean. Pretty soon, next week, we're going to introduce list types or collections. We'll skip those for now because that's a whole nother thing that we're going to have to introduce. So I want to talk about now, how do we name a variable well? And what am I looking for when I'm grading your work? Obviously, it's all pass fail. But one of the things I might leave you comments on is, hey, your variable names are kind of weak. I would recommend doing those in a more robust way. So a string, a variable name, let me back up just a minute. A variable name, if it's really good, should include two things. It should include something that refers to what it's used for or what it represents, and it should include some reference to the type of data that it is. Because then you, just by looking at the name of a variable, will automatically know everything you need to know about that variable. So if I want to include in my program a variable that holds my name, and it's a string type, I might name it str for string, capital N for name, and then it's readable, and it's easy to figure out what that is. Again, an age might be int age or int age with a capital A for an integer. Okay, so float GPA, if I wanted to create a float, sometimes I get even more lazy and I just say FL GPA. What you'll discover about me throughout this class is that, like many programmers, I'm fundamentally lazy. And so if I can do something with less work, I'm going to do it with less work. So FLGPA would be an easy way to do that for this kind of number. And then Boolean, like me, for a Boolean, which is true or false. Okay, so what I'm demonstrating over here with the way I've put these together, there is no official way to name variables. there are conventions that are widely used. There are different schools of thought about this. But what I'm telling you is based on my hours and hours of time programming and making bad decisions about this, naming my variables X and Y and Z. What I've landed on, and if you look at any of the code that I write, you'll see this, is including something that tells me what type of data it is and something that tells me what that variable is used for, because it saves me so much time and it makes things so much clearer in the long run. But the pattern that I'm using here is just a suggestion. You could use S name or I age or whatever. I'm just going to recommend that you include those two things in every variable name. And the way that I have named them here, where I start out lowercase, have a few letters, and then in the next word capitalize it, there's a name for that, and it's common convention for any technology, and it's called camel case. And what it does is it allows you to put lots of words together with no spaces and still have it be readable, right? You can read this because it says this is called camel case, because each new word in that string is capitalized. So that's a recommendation, not a requirement, but using camel case as your variable names makes them easier to read, as opposed to all lowercase. It's much harder to read, right? So when we create variable names, we want to use camel case and something that would indicate what this is for. So what I'd probably say here is str first name. I would say int age, something like that. Okay. And I try to be relatively specific. Of course, I don't want variable names that are 30 characters long either, because that's a lot of typing. If that variable appears, every time that variable appears in my code, I'm going to have to retype it. So it's always this balance. It's kind of like, has anybody ever picked out a personalized license plate here in class, right? If you've ever thought about that, like what would you have on a personalized license plate? You know, you get 7 spaces. So you're trying to cram as much meaning into those 7 spaces as possible. So you do weird little abbreviations or whatever, and that's fine. The primary person that's going to read most of your code is you. But you may share your code with other people. So you want to think about how to make that readable in other ways as well. And one of the ways that we make code readable is through the use of comments. Now, in Python, a comment is any line that starts with the number sign or the hashtag. Okay? And so no matter what I write on this line after the hashtag, it's not going to be run by the Python interpreter. It's going to be ignored. It's going to be completely ignored. So in this program is 3 lines, but the first 2 lines are comments. And so when I run that program, all it's going to do is say hello. It won't do anything in those first 2 lines. It completely ignores them. What do we use comments for? We use comments to describe what it is we're doing in our program. So I might say, print a word. Okay, so if I'm writing a program, let's just say, I say str name, and I'm going to get input from the user. It's going to say enter your name. And so I would have a comment on that line where I say get the name from the user. So I'm basically describing what it is I'm doing there. And then in the next line, with the user's input, so I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to put the user's name right in there just like that. So now this wonderful 2-line program does 2 things. It gets input from the user, and then it takes whatever they type and it puts it into that greeting and prints it out. So if I do that, if I run this program, Run. There we go. So if I run the program, first thing it says is enter your name. It's going to wait for me to do that before it goes to the next line. So I'm going to type my name and I hit enter, and then it comes back with hello, Bill. So that's a relatively simple program, but the comments are what I want to focus your attention on, because the comments are what I use to describe what it is I'm doing. As you write code for this class, part of the way that I want you to help me understand what it is you are doing in your code is by including comments. Do you need to comment every single line? No, I don't care to read that many comments. I basically want you to put enough comments in there that if somebody who was new to programming read your code, they could understand what you're kind of doing throughout your program. And that helps me understand where you're coming from when you create code, because there's a million different answers to every problem. That's the beauty of coding. So